Hey there, everybody. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist, and welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first novel, and on my channel, I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of all writing, and that's the characters. And the heart of the characters is in their psychology. So that's the angle I like to take with pretty much everything I talk about on my channel. Okay, so today we are talking about a topic that I've been thinking about for a while. I wasn't real sure the angle I wanted to take, so I decided to go with this one. I am a big fan of description in stories, not overwhelming description, but I think there is something to be said of making a place in your story feel like a character, in that it creates an emotional response from people. But what I usually see is people tend to omit the one sense that is most closely related with emotion, and that is smell. I know this sounds weird. um, most of the books I read, I can clearly picture it, I can see it, I can hear it. But those are usually the two main senses the author uses. And I think that I understand why. Those are the ones we're usually the most focused on. But as I said in my intro, the point of a description is to really transport your reader to another place, let them feel like they're really there. And one of the best ways to do that is through emotion. And memory and emotion are closely linked, and the sense of smell is the sense most closely linked with that sense. Okay, I used sense a lot in that sentence. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about that just a little bit. So essentially, the thing that makes smell different is that it is the only sense that we have that essentially has a direct link to your amygdala and your hippocampus. And these are organisms inside your organs inside your brain that are responsible for mood and emotion regulation and memory. All your other senses, taste, sight, hearing, touch, they all go through the thalamus first, which is essentially your brain's kind of switchboard, for lack of a better word. And then it directs them to where it needs to go, and then you get an emotional response. So, smell is the only one that literally has a direct path. It doesn't have to go through anybody telling it where to go, it goes straight to where your emotions and your memories sit. And that's why smell is most likely to trigger memories, both positive and negative. And the thing I find fascinating about this is most of the time it doesn't trigger what we would call pictorial memory, which is where you kind of see pictures, it kind of plays like a movie. It usually triggers more what we call an emotional memory, which is actually your first kind of memory that forms. This is the memory you have before you hit like the age of 4 or 5 generally. Because really about 4 or 5 is where you start to first have your pictorial memories, where you start to think, okay, these are the movies, these that I can play in my head, these are what happened. Before that time, though, you still had the ability to make memories, just not that tight. And these are emotional memories. And what that is essentially you can't remember it in movie form, but you do remember what it made you feel like. And that hence the name emotional memory. And smell can pull up these feelings from way back when. Like a good example, I want you guys to think about let's say the most comforting place you've ever been. Most of the time, there is a specific smell associated with it. Like, for example, I can distinctly remember the smell of my grandmother's house. More so than what it looked like, or the sounds, or even the layout of the place, but the smell when you walked into the kitchen. I cannot describe the smell to you to save my life, but I know exactly what it is. And when I think of that smell, or I smell something that's similar to that scent, it takes me right back there, and I'm feeling like I'm 7 again, and I'm sitting in the kitchen with my grandmother. And it's just this overall feeling of connectiveness, belongingness, safeness, warmth. It's nostalgia, essentially. And that's really what an emotional memory is it's just all these feelings that you don't necessarily even have a name for. Like, I think there is, that's actually one reason I love looking at words in other languages, because sometimes other languages have words that we don't have in English that can explain a feeling. But that's essentially what smell does. And I think if you're trying to create a sense of a particular emotion in your story with a description, and that's usually what we are trying to do on some degree. If you think about it, if you're describing the main character's home and you want this to feel like the safe place before they make the decision to go out on their journey, you want to invoke this sense of, protectiveness, being belonging, that kind of thing. And while you can describe what it looks like, what it sounds like, and the people that move in and out of it, that's not really hitting the emotional center that you want. But associating a smell with it that the main character clings to and says, okay, this is the smell that makes me remember, being held by my mother, or things like that. Almost every single person can relate to that. And that's one of the ways you connect with your reader, is giving them things that they can empathize with. So having a character say, this place smells like this, it smells like mom cooking breakfast on a Saturday morning, or something like that. That's something that your reader can read and say, I get that, I understand that, I feel that. And then you have that emotional connection. And that's what you want. Smell is also something that you guys might find interesting. While it is linked to taste, what I find more interesting is how closely it is linked to emotion. Like I said before, it is one of the things that conjures up emotional memory and things like that. But what they've also found is that people that have lost their sense of smell, we usually hear about it also like cutting their sense of taste in half. And that's true, because they are linked. But the other thing it does is these people, 9 times out of 10, also report it has dulled their emotion. They still feel emotion, but it is not as intense or personal as it once was, because this very strong link to emotion is gone. So that's something to bear in mind. And I think like I said, I don't think writers leave this out on purpose. I think it's just not the first thing we think about when we're describing a scene. But again, like you guys know me by now, I love me my Lord of the Rings. But the thing that the Shire does for me is it triggers a smell. I think of how my grandmother's backyard smelled. I think about how the berries that used to grow way back in the backyard past her garden would smell like. I can hear the bees buzzing around them. I can smell the honeysuckle. I can taste the honeysuckle just from smell, just from picturing the smell. And that sense of essential home is why the Shire is so important to me, is why it hits me so hard every single time I read that book. So just a little bit on, maybe we should write some more on smell in our books. I think it might improve our writing more than we think it does. So that is just my little quick thing on using smell in writing. I hope you guys found it interesting. As always, if you have any comments or suggestions, leave them below. If you want to make sure you never miss when I upload, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't. I upload every Friday, every Sunday. And as always, if you guys have any requests for any topics you'd like me to address, please let me know. And until next time, I hope you guys have a good one.